darling. It's me, Elvira, the hostess with the mostest. And speaking of hosts, I bet you'd like to know just how I got started being a horror host. Well, this couch had something to do with it, if you know what I mean. Oh yeah, and luck, talent, and a little something called desperation. I mean, hey, look, even mistresses of the dark have to eat. But if you want to see someone really chew up the scenery, get ready to meet Dr. Shocker and his sidekick, Igor.
Hello, boys and ghouls, and welcome to Shock Theater. I'm your host, Dr. Shocker. And of course you all remember Igor. We have a spooktacular show for you today. What is it, Igor?
How come Igor never go first?
Excuse me?
Igor's name, never first, always Dr. Shocker, then Igor.
Well, that's because I am the horror host. That's why my name is first, and you are the lowly servant minion type.
It no fair.
Look, my grammatically challenged friend, it's not easy being the horror host. I have to explain the movie to the audience, and read the fan mail, and give away the fabulous prizes. You don't have to do any of those things. That's why your name is last.
What Igor do?
Oh, Igor, well, you... No, I do that. Oh, no, I do that too. Oh, I know. I let you clean up around here.
True.
Yes, Igor. Without you, who would put the dust on the toys and the cobwebs on the casket, and who would sprinkle graveyard dirt all around the floor?
Then Igor important too?
Yes, Igor, I suppose what you do in some pathetic little way is important too.
Good. Then next time, Igor, go first.
Okay, Igor, listen to me very carefully. I'm very uncomfortable negotiating these things in front of our loyal fans. Do you mind if I introduce you to my lawyer?
Oh.
Good. Now that that's settled, why don't you go make sure the Horror Host Hall of Fame is ready for our fiends at home? Good boy. Now, as I said, we have a truly spooktacular show for you today, because today you're going to meet some of the greatest horror hosts of the last 50 years. And if we have time, we're going to give away some fabulous prizes. Igor! Thank you. That'll be all. Get out. And now, my voracious viewers, I'd like to introduce you to some wonderful men and women who help make watching monster movies much more maniacal. And then after that, we will reveal to you the #1 horror host of all time. Now, I'm sure Dr. Shocker's loyal viewers won't be surprised when we pull that cloth away. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Because the true story of horror hosts began in a little town called Los Angeles in 1954. That's when young horror fans were first vexed by this vixen named Vampira. In 1954, television station KABC decided its package of old horror films needed something to make them seem more in tune with the taste of the 1950s. That's when actress Mila Nurmi created the ghoulishly gorgeous Vampira, a character who introduced the Saturday Night Horror Show. She became television's very first horror host and added a hip and humorous element to the showing of classic films.
I'm sure I was born to do it, and it's probably the whole purpose of my life, although I'd like to think I have better things to do. What happened was I wanted to do the woman on the Addams Family. I wanted to bring the Addams Family to television. And in my attempts to do so, I did a sketch of the costume. I thought, now, there's a big masquerade ball. 2,000 people go to it, and they're very sophisticated. They will have read The New Yorker, where the Addams Family appeared. So I'll give it one last shot. I'll go there as Mrs. Addams, and maybe I'll get discovered. I was lucky to be spotted on my first night out in costume by a young program director who was looking for someone to add a little spice to his late night movies. He wanted a host. movies that he had were horror movies, so apparently what he wanted was a horror host. I didn't even know what that was, but when he saw me and loved me, he told me what he had in mind, and we did it. I kept the black dress, and I kept the black hair and the pale skin. I became a vampire. I was a vampire, all right. But I added the B&D, the bondage and discipline thing to it, I thought. Sex and death, that's a good combination. Nobody seems to know what was the tone of the Vampira show, because it was all live and most of the footage is, you know, either gone or didn't exist or has disappeared. But those who saw it know it was like a one-person Saturday Night Live. And all the other characters were imaginary. And Vampira actually satirized and played a lot of parts. She didn't just stay Vampira. She satirized everyone and everything. I used to like to sing, and sometimes I wrote little songs, you know, like, oh, and that famous thing, there goes my eyeball into my highball, leprosy, oh my God, I've got leprosy. You know, things like that I would put in and do here and there. I love to dance, so I'm the one that was always just dancing and jiggling. I never stopped dancing in those days. I played Vampira 24 hours a day because 4 hours I was sleeping and dreaming about it, but the rest of the time the studio had me in a harness and I'm going thither and yon, always in character, always in character. Luncheon with the press or, you know, DJ shows, you name it, I did it all. Snipping ribbons at supermarkets, all that, you know, in full character. The night owls will fly, the devils will brew. Halloween is the night for Vampira and you. The movies are horrors at the stroke of 11. And Vampira is just dying to meet you on 7.
Perhaps one of the most famous horror show hosts was a gentleman named John Zachary, known to his millions of fans as Zachary the Cool Ghoul. Now that is a good-looking guy. John Zachary began his career in the 1950s, appearing on local television programs in Philadelphia. In one live show, he played an undertaker, which gave the station programmers a fiendishly good idea.
I got a phone call from the station that said, hey, we got all these horror movies, and how'd you like to be the host? And this happened all around the country. The films were, Shock Theater was the name of the group of films that somebody put together out in Hollywood. I said, well, okay. I had no idea. And I wore the same black coat that I had worn on the show, the cowboy show, which I had really stolen from the little theater group. That I wore as the Undertaker. The guy in charge of scenery building was also the makeup man, and he tried to make me look like Bela Lugosi or something. And that's how come I parted my hair in the middle and did this sloppy job of makeup. It was really outrageous and overdone and so on. But it was part of the character. One time, the table that the guys used to sit behind when they were given the sports results, and they saved all that stuff and they painted it gray and put a handle on it and made it look like a casket. And that's where I kept my wife. We couldn't afford to have an extra character, so it was just a make-believe lady in the box and another make-believe character off stage. And we started introducing these movies. So I used to open up the show with limericks that were sent in by the people. And I'd say, good evening, this is Roland here, and this was sent to me by someone in Roxburgh, Pennsylvania, or maybe Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. I would recite this thing. Dinner was served for 3 at Dracula's house by the sea. The hors d'oeuvres were fine, but I choked on my wine when I found that the main course was me. So next thing you knew, I was in New York City doing it. And they had showed the films here for a year, shown them here for a year before I was the host. And it didn't seem to matter. Got a whole new audience. And I kept up doing all these crazy experiments. I had a big amoeba. Did you ever see the big amoeba? Wow. And we would operate on it and do all kinds of, try to mate to amoeba. And that was all part of the show.
Today, Zachary continues to be as popular as ever. Viewers young and old can meet him at conventions around the country, and he's even the host of his own comic book. Zachary wasn't the only horror host who came to fame showing classic monster movies that were part of the shock theater package. Some of the other garrulous ghouls who left audiences dying with laughter were Pittsburgh's Chilly Billy, Philadelphia's Dr. Shock, Cleveland's infamous Ghoulardi, and Al Lewis of Munsters fame. But as local syndicated shows gave way to the booming cable TV industry, many of our fiendish friends gave up the ghost. But it took the debut of this sexy shocker to transfuse fresh blood into the genre. In 1981, when actress Cassandra Peterson donned this black wig and transformed herself into Elvira, her show's ratings rose faster than any teenage boy's libido.
I heard about an audition for a horror host at a local station here in LA because the last horror host for several years, Seymour, had passed away and they were looking for someone to replace him. So a friend of mine knew the director, had him come and see me at the Ground Link Theater, and he liked the character that I did there very much, which was nothing like Elvira, but it's kind of a dippy valley girl actress. After I got the part, he said, "Can you come up with something that's spooky, dark, you know, black?" And I said, "Yeah, I guess, with that character?" And he said, "Yeah." So we did. The only guideline I really have for Elvira is she can't get too classy. She has to keep a little bit of cheese going. She's more the trailer park and beer drinking kind of gal. I think the main difference with Elvira and other horror hosts is that she combines sexuality with humor and with the dark side. So she kind of has three different elements that people like. It's a combination of those things. I believe the fact that the Elvira show was syndicated for 7 years and played all over the country and in Canada is the reason the character became so popular. It wasn't a local horror host any longer. The licensing and the merchandising really contributed to the character's popularity, and people became familiar with the character through all that merchandising. I've heard from thousands of truly weird people. That's my crowd, man. They love me. The truly weird ones. I mean, I get mail from everything from prisoners and bikers to nuns, monks, and the heads of satanic cults and people dressed as goats, and you wouldn't believe. No, I get some really interesting mail. I think of Elvira as a separate entity, not so much as a real person maybe, but a separate person from me. Kind of like a business, kind of like she has a life of her own. I didn't imagine this character would become a career. When I first went up for the audition, I thought, oh boy, a job that'll pay me a couple $100 a week, and you know, I can work and be a serious actor in my spare time. But it took over my life. It took over not only my career, but my life, and I love it.
And now, fiends at home, it's time for the moment you've all been waiting for. It's time to reveal the #1 best ever horror host in the world. Now, before I remove this cloth, I just want to say that it's important to remember that he, the man whose picture is under here, is no different than any of you other horror fans. Ladies and gentlemen, the best horror host ever.
How'd I get there?
Igor!
Screaming relaxes me so.